If you want to know if Google Data Studio has automatically refreshed the data as a viewer and you don't have any sort of edit or admin access, you can go to either the bottom or the top of your page and they'll have this little data refresh information down here. Or it could be near the top as well. And it'll say the last time the cache for Data Studio updated. So the cache is just the last time Data Studio went out and talked to whatever data set, whether it was an API or an actual database. So it doesn't necessarily mean the last time a database was updated. So if you're an admin, there's a couple other things you can do, or an editor. The first thing you do is you can come up here and you can actually refresh the data. So you can just press a manual refresh and it'll force the whole data to update. Now, viewer, you do have another option too. So you have a splicer here, like a date splicer, and you pick a different date range that isn't the dates that's currently shown. It's possible it can force a cache refresh because it's pulling in data that's not available in the cache. So the cache is just that saved data set, and if you're asking for a new data set, it's obviously going to have to go back and ask the server for that new data set for directly from the data sources. Now, another thing you can do as an admin is if you go into your data sets, let's close this and go back here. So if you go to actually resources, manage added data sources, and if you're an admin of a data source, you can go in and edit. And you can do a couple things. One is this data freshness. This tells Google how often you want this data cached, so that way you could set it to different times based on the source. So here, this is Google Analytics, and we could even set it to every hour to go in there and go and double check that data. The other thing too is if, for instance, for whatever reason you change the actual source data, there's this little thing right down here underneath my face that says refresh. And that's if, say, you have new schema, so you've changed some fields, you've removed some fields, you've added some fields, you can click that little refresh and it will pull in those new fields or remove fields as needed. So that's another additional attribute that you can have there in terms of working with it at a level. And so the main thing there too is to think about is that the cache is really about what Data Studio can see. So if, for instance, if you're using BigQuery and it has a chronological job that pulls from another source every day, even if you update the cache, if that BigQuery data set isn't up to date, Data Studio can't force BigQuery to update its data set. It'll just re-pull that same data even if it's hours or days behind. So that's something to always keep in mind. Now, an API is a different story where every time it goes and refreshes that cache, it's going to ask that API and reset that data. So if you are working with APIs, you will notice that it can be slower to actually pulling that update because it's going back and trying to pull that source data. So thank you so much. Please go ahead and subscribe to our channel if you want to learn more about Google Data Studio, Google Analytics, or some of the other cool Google products like BigQuery.